welcome back to the Space and Grace podcast. Y'all, this is season 3. I am so excited to sit here in my makeshift audio studio space. I'm so excited and nervous to bring you more thoughts, more engaging conversations on season 3. This season, I am challenging myself to be more authentic, to be true to who I am. My first 2 seasons, I wrote every word you heard me say. I literally typed it out and rehearsed it. But it was only because I wanted to make sure I was perfect. But because of that, I stopped recording. So I'm in this space where I don't want perfection. I want progression. I want growth. And I want authenticity. And I want that for myself and for you too. So here we are. Now, understand me well. I research every topic. I am thoughtful in my word choice and transparent in my knowledge. So you will hear me recite things, but I will continue to be as transparent as my healing allows and make you aware of when I can. So if you're still down with me, let's get season 3 started. Welcome to the Space and Grace podcast. I am your host, Tanisha Harris, and I am your CHEO, Chief Honesty and Encouragement Officer. Here at Space and Grace, we focus on healing, laughing, thriving, and loving. And we do that by granting ourselves and others the space and grace to evolve in very practical ways. Y'all ready? Let's do this. Episode 1. Welcome, friend. How are you today? I hope you are well. As always, let's take some time to breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Okay, so how are you? I'm so excited to present today's topic. It is important to me, it is personal to me, and I'm just going to jump right in. Today we're talking about mental health and therapy. And I just felt the need to start this conversation in a way that's informal and informative, but also in a way that is personal and relatable. And so I'm going to break this topic into 4 podcasts. Today we're going to talk about what is mental health, who is a therapist, and why it's important. And then we're going to jump into making the decision to choose a therapist, like making the decision to say, okay, I'm ready now. What does that look like? What happens? What questions do you ask yourself? And then I'm going to talk about actually choosing a therapist. What does that really look like? Where do I go? How do I find one? And then when you actually make your appointment, we're going to talk about what do you do in your first session? Is there really a couch? What does that look like? How does that feel? I hope you'll join me and share with me. So let's just jump into it. As you know, me being a public health girl, I want to lay the foundation. So I want to make sure we are all on the same page, understanding what mental health is. You will hear different topics in the field, different definitions, or mainly different words that may be used interchangeably. So I will always suggest that you look up things, that you research. You may hear the discussion around mental health, around mental illness. I really want to frame this discussion around wellness. And so mental health, according to mentalhealth.gov, which is ran by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. It determines how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and how we make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. This is a topic that we don't really talk about a lot, particularly in the Black community. We hear different terms being thrown around if someone behaves or responds in a way that we don't understand. And I've really worked hard to not use those terms. I've worked really hard to, as I am relating to others and making decisions, to not think of myself or of others in a way. So, if you don't know me, let me just give you some backdrop. No, I am not a licensed therapist, so you will not get any therapy here. But I am a public health practitioner and I have had a therapist since 2015. One episode, I'll share with you more about why I decided to get a therapist. But right now, just know that having a therapist has been one of the most beneficial aspects of my life. Having a therapist has taught me how to navigate this world, how to navigate others, and how to navigate my feelings. So, having a therapist for me is just as much as important as having a dentist or a primary care physician. Okay? So, there are different types of mental health disorders. You will hear anxiety disorder, mood disorder, eating disorders, personality disorders. There's all different types of disorders. But what I really want to focus on, and the topic that I want to just drive home, is that mental health affects all of us. And we need to discuss it, share our stories, and learn the best ways to navigate and treat. Okay, so a therapist. What does that even look like? Where do we even go? Your therapist is your licensed counselor. Your therapist is the person that will give you an unbiased but very educated and very experienced thought process. My therapists have all been women who understand my role in the world, my role at home. And so that helps me to really sit and kind of talk with them and to discuss with them. Your therapist needs to be someone that you know you're going to be honest with. Your therapist will be someone who's going to challenge you and push you. Now, I really want to spend most of this podcast talking about why it is important. You know me, I don't ever feel the need to have you here for 40 minutes if I can drive the point home in 5. Having a therapist teaches you, teaches us, has taught me how to navigate this world. Literally. I may feel a certain type of way and I may respond in a way that I never even know that I'm doing. I may have been taught to respond a certain way to a decision or a circumstance, and it has just changed my behavior. I'll give you an example. I was always the friend growing up that cared about everyone else. I was always the friend that when someone was upset or frustrated, it was important to me that I talk to them. It was important to me that I ask them, what's wrong? What can I do to help? It didn't matter whether I was the cause or not. I just felt that it was important for all of us to be able to come to school and be happy at school, right? So I started to get this reputation of you always think someone's wrong. You're always worried about everybody. Just stop, just stop. And so I started to build this shell around myself where I was tough and hard and defensive. And what they really turned into is when there were people in my life that loved me and cared for me, they got the defensive part of me. They got the assertive part of me. There's a place for that, but it wasn't for everybody. As I started to have relationships with people, as I started to grow in my workplace relationships, I started to see how it impacted my heart and my soul. Something felt off. I started to look around and see other people who were defensive. And I always felt like, well, is that me? Or when I felt that I was snappy with someone, I didn't feel right. I didn't feel me. I didn't feel whole. So it was my third therapist, actually, where we were having a conversation about why I respond to my mom in a way, or why do I respond to my daughter in a way, or why am I responding to my coworker this way? Why am I talking to myself in this way? And we had this discussion around being tough, and we had this discussion around having this shell and what I was taught, whether it was directly or indirectly, and what I learned and what I picked up and what society has placed on me. And she said something to me that I absolutely loved. And I wrote it down. We'll talk about that, about taking notes in your session. But she said, the world needs a tender heart. And that's what you have. That's what you give. That changed my entire perspective. That changed how I looked at myself. That changed how I saw my role and my soul's mission on this earth. And I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect, but I have accepted that I am the woo-woo, mushy, I'm going to hold your hand, hug you, and cry with you friend. That's me. And when I do that, my soul and my heart smiles. It warms because I'm being who I was created to be. That's an example of how my therapist has helped me learn how to navigate this world. I didn't come here to be super scientific, and I didn't come here to give you all the definitions of all the things. I just wanted to just bring this topic to you, have a very informal conversation in hopes that at the very least, it opens you up to start the conversation, to have the questions, to think about you, to think about your friends. I no longer want us to be silent about anxiety, about mental health, about a therapist. I don't want the stigma. The very thing in our lives that we're silent about is killing us, literally and figuratively. So I hope you take this episode and share it. I hope it reaches you. Please let me know what you think. And I'm so very grateful that you're here with me. As always, thank you for listening and sharing your time with me. I hope you heard something that resonated with you, something that challenged you, something that encouraged you, something that loved you. I want this podcast to serve you well. If any of that has happened, please help me with the following. Subscribe, follow the podcast, share with your family and friends. Leave me a review. Let me know your honest thoughts. Send me an audio note and let me know if you want me to include it in the podcast. And send me an email if you have a topic or question you'd like me to talk about. I will have all of the links and the email listed in our show notes. Y'all ready? Let's do this.